I have been a great fan of your piano performance for maybe the past 30 years.
Thank
so
you very much.
I listened to many of your CDs. I went to many of your concerts. And so I understand that your repertoire, its core repertoire, is German and Austrian classical works, like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, Brahms, etc. So could you tell us why you're primarily focused on German piano? Although you are Russian originally, so but you don't play much of Rachmaninoff or Schubert, I guess.
No.
So can you explain?
Because I prefer Beethoven, Schubert. So that's why. Actually, nationality. Well, I don't know the whereabouts. All this doesn't count really. Well, if you face a piece of music, if you hear it, if you touch it through the piano and so on. So what matters is this kind of communication chord you establish. And so what does it matter who was who? I mean, in terms of blood and geography. Yes, all my life I've played. I started probably with Mozart and Bach, of course, and they're still with me. So, Russia, as far as Russian music goes, I remember I played Tchaikovsky's first concerto in the competition, the Brussels competition. So, never again. This is out of the question. Gilels, my wonderful, unique teacher, was very attached to Tchaikovsky. He even played the third concerto. Well, it's not my case. Although I conducted, for instance, his sixth symphony. It was recorded here, actually, in Japan. And I'm happy to have done it because I like this symphony very much, and conducting it was kind of, I don't know, relief in a way, because I did it, and then I was liberated from conducting, because actually it's really not my cup of tea. It's quite enough to perform others, to perform other creations of others on the piano. I shouldn't just, it's very fashionable to become a conductor. So it's just the same, I prefer to write another piece of literary work, because every time I write, I create a world. It's very banal, but it's true. Even if I rewrite a sentence, I create a world. The Karajan used to say, now I just forget about the Bruckner symphonies I recorded 5 years ago. Now it's different. It's just going on over and over the same symphony. Once again, it's not my cup of tea. I adore life, the variety of life, and I want to create life myself. So instead of just playing the same, every year, you devote 1 year to one program, it becomes more and more perfect, and at the end, no, not my cup of tea. Although Rachmaninoff did it. Rachmaninoff also had one program, 1.5, say, for a year. Just wonder how he managed not to get bored with it. So it's not my way, not my lifestyle.
So, okay, can I ask, is there any reason why you choose not to play Russian music so much?
No, it's... can you say... of course, nowadays, artists, Russian artists, and not only Russian artists, actually, I have to to make a choice, you know. For me, there is no choice to be made, you know. I condemn utterly, irrevocably, this invasion of Ukraine, partial invasion of Ukraine, irrevocably. But let's forget about it for a moment. It's just, I've said it and that's it. But otherwise, I don't feel in any way obliged to play Russian music because I was born in Russia. So actually let me be free in this domain, as many other domains. I choose not to play the Tchaikovsky concerto again. So I prefer Beethoven.
Yes, I really enjoy listening to your Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, etc. Of course, and so it's great for me. At least you focus on those music rather than Prokofiev or Scriabin so much, because I guess Beethoven or Schubert, Mozart are probably better, if I could say it.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, okay. So yeah, for me, your CD, which includes Brahms, Opus 117, 118, and 119, your early recording, was a big shock to me, where I was so amazed. And it's a completely new kind of Brahms appeared, I thought. So, and you will play 118 again in Tokyo this time, which I'm very much looking forward to. So, but they are also together with Moment Musical by Schubert. They are very short and introspective pieces. So how do you choose the programs for recitals or CD recordings?
You know, unfortunately, I gained a kind of momentum for making new recordings. And with Sony Classical, we had to cancel 2 sessions because of COVID. And it was a bit pity because I wanted to record the Hammer Clavier Sonata, you know, this, again, Beethoven again. But, well, in this case, I mean, as far as my recordings go, well, I'd like to record what I haven't recorded yet. As far as concerts go, well, there are a multitude of reasons which are based on the geography, partly, yes, of my tours and so on. So actually it's difficult to say, but one thing is certain, I'll never say farewell to Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, whatever happens. And then the rest depends on my moods. I don't know, sometimes some external circumstances. But anyway, well, these are the composers which constitute the core of my repertoire and of my being as well.
So some pianists choose, let's say, Beethoven's 32 piano sonatas at the same time, or like they want to make a big catalog of those things over. So do you have intention to do such a thing?
Probably it's too late, I don't know, because should think about the duration of human life. But actually, it's a pity I didn't record this, or couldn't record because of COVID, the Hammerklavier. Well, probably I may go back to it, although we're still in grips with COVID to such an extent that we have to wear masks, actually. But, well, let's wait and see. I never work automatically. Well, I have to record all this. There's not my style. Well, now it's, well, okay, I still feel like recording Beethoven's works, sonatas. Okay, so, but not just at all costs I must and so on. No, never. So, well, and destiny and chance played enormous role in our lives. So actually, if my destiny says yes, I can join in.
But I'd love to listen to your Hammerklavier, how you play the third movement, how you play the fugue, etc. I hope it will be realized very soon.
Thank you. Yes, well, I'll do my best, I promise.
Thank you, great. So can we move to a different kind of topic? Because you touched upon Russian situation, current situation. But from the Japanese people's point of view, Russia is an enigmatic country, very difficult to understand, maybe impossible to understand, maybe, but we'd like to know Russia better. And so you were born in Russia but moved to the West, so you kind of in a position to compare those two different cultures. And so we maybe Russian Orthodoxy, Russian Empire, Soviet, and even Mongolian domination in the early 13th, 14th century.
Don't remember this domination.
So I mean,
Present.
any comments that you could give us about the Russianness or Russian culture, Russian art would be great.
Russia is an enigma for many reasons, but it doesn't excuse at all the intervention that took place in February, and it goes on and on. This is absolutely inadmissible, absolutely inadmissible. So let us not hide behind this, but after all, Russia is. No. Enigmas are not disgusting, really. Shouldn't be disgusting. And this time, whether it's enigmatic or not, it's disgusting. So just condemn it with my utmost energy. But yes, no, because Russia belongs in part. Russia belongs to Asia. Well, it's well known. It's a tutor of the Russian poet put it. You can't measure Russia out because it's special. You can only believe in Russia. Well, I choose not to believe in Russia now because it's abominable and it's supported by so many people. This terrorists, I don't know, triple terrorists. This is, I just refuse to understand this, let alone approve of this. So, yes, Russia is enigmatic, but let's just be enigmatic within limits, reasonable limits. This is unreasonable and criminal. So, you can be enigmatic differently. I mean, art is enigmatic. Russian art is difficult. Tolstoy is not easy. Many other writers. And a symbol of our brotherhood, I mean, the Ukrainians and the Russians are united in Gogol. And this shouldn't be forgotten. It's one of my favorite writers. And but now it's completely obliterated by this horror of horrors. And just not the enigmas within reason. any unreasonable artist should be reasonable in order to create a work of art. It's impossible to be unreasonable when you create a work of art. You should be lucid. You should remain in charge. Otherwise, it's just chaos and rubbish. So actually, and all these Russian writers and composers, they remained within reason. Take Shostakovich, you take Stravinsky, who was Russian after all. Stravinsky, it's not beyond reason, beyond enigmatic. Yes, enigmatic, but reasonably enigmatic. So if you commit crimes, you're not enigmatic, you're just a criminal.
I see. So regardless of how you view the current Russian government, I think there's no doubt that Russia has had a great literary or music tradition, and we all appreciate it. Everybody in the world knows. So, like when you play like Beethoven or Schubert or Bach, are you aware or conscious that you are a Russian after all, and you have certain traits, Russian traits are found in your performance?
No, I have to be aware of myself when I write. You have to be aware of yourself. Know thyself is very good.
Sorry, maybe my question was wrong. So, what about if you listen to other pianist performers, like Gilels was your teacher, you feel some Russianness in his performance, or other Russian pianists?
No. Yes. Gilels told me once, it's probably not for to say off. Gilels told me once, all my life I've been trying to forget the Moscow Conservatoire. It's very interesting. No, because you are yourself. You should search for yourself all the time. And if you're just rely on external help, however great and important it may be, then no. So actually, I wanted to say something about previous topic. Actually, this condemnation that I uttered gave voice to voice, is absolutely undeniable and irrevocable, as I said earlier. But what I don't understand is the fact that from the policy of this tyrant, crazy tyrant. No, crazy. He's not crazy. It would be easier to deal with him if he was crazy. Unfortunately, he's not crazy. He has his own logic, which is bloody and criminal. But why punish music lovers, for instance? Well, I don't know, readers and so on. Why cancel the performances of Tchaikovsky's works, of Prokofiev's works, of Shostakovich? What do they have to do with this war? Well, it goes for many. Well, Dostoevsky was forbidden in Poland, for instance. The Russians don't exist anymore. So I just want to remind all of us one fact, an interesting fact. In 1940, when the war was already won, of course, Toscanini conducted an all-Wagner program in New York. And he invited Melchior, a German tenor. The concert took place nobody complained. There were no manifestations or whatever, you know, or for demonstrations, whatever, of anger. It wasn't. And now, well, Wagner was a well-known Nazi's pet. So why did they allow this concert to take place? Because Wagner has nothing to do with the Second World War. Probably he inspired some people, but it's too remote, this kind of influence. You know, we can't really accuse him or deprive people of such a concert, Toscanini conducting Wagner and Melchior saying. So actually, I think this is a huge mistake, which plays into Putin's hands, because he can always say, well, you see, Russophobia, as they put it now, they all hate Russians. If they forbid Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, and well, they hate the Russians, so we should, you know, react. So this is a very bad policy, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course, Dostoevsky or Tchaikovsky are not responsible for what is happening in Russia or Ukraine at all, of course. But I guess some musicians, maybe who are close with Putin or some connections, maybe, I don't know, some people blame those musicians and they want to prohibit their performance in Japan or elsewhere.
The point is that actually, well, some people, conductors chiefly, they rely, well, let's take Kurentis, for instance. He's sponsored by two.
Yes, Gazprom.
Yes, Gazprom and so on.
Yes.
Well, if he condemns, well, Putin, for instance, well, he loses at once. He loses his support. The finances he must rely upon. It's just unthinkable without. You might say, well, okay, he should have foreseen this situation and started working with Western or Japanese orchestra. No, but that's how it is now, and that he can't really do it. I'm absolutely sure it's normal artists, normal man or woman. You know, they can't approve of this. It should be really either a patriot to the core, you know, this crazy patriot, or, I don't know, just insane. So actually, I think many of them condemn what's going on, but they can't do it. For instance, let's take another example from another sphere. Sakurov, who is a very, very good film director. He went recently. He was in Locarno to take part in this festival, and there was a press conference, and he was asking questions, and then somebody talked at length actually about the situation, comparing Putin to Hitler and so on, and he said, well, the man, the one who was asking this question, said, what's your reaction? What's your opinion? And Sakurov answered, I absolutely agree with you. But he didn't say, I condemn, you know, because that would have meant, well, now, because Putin sponsored his Faust, for instance, his film. So even the so-called oligarchs didn't participate, you know, didn't give the helping hand. So, but just to say, well, that's all he could do, you know, just to say, I absolutely agree with you, without saying anything himself. So the situation is very difficult. You can even land up in a prison, you know, anything can happen now. You know that even if you use the word war, you can find yourself in prison. Now it's actually, there's a joke now. Somebody was arrested because it's not true, but it's a joke. Because he was carrying War and Peace by Tolstoy. Because there was the word war.
Oh.
So, no, the situation is... But when it happened, actually, on the 24th of February, when the Russians invaded, attacked Ukraine, I said to myself, because I was actually watching, it was on the internet, and I said to myself, now I lost Russia for the second time, and this time forever. Because I lost it in 1974 when I asked for political asylum, was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment in absentia. But now it's for sure. I was asked to play in Moscow now. I said, no question. So actually, well, still I have Pushkin, Tolstoy, Chekhov. And my cat speaks with me in Russian. So we speak Russian. So that's enough.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I understand, like soprano singer Netrebko, she was criticized for not criticizing the Russian government. Then finally she criticized the government. So she's now kind of a persona non grata, both in West and Russia.
Yes.
So there are some such unfortunate cases. Thank you very much. So, okay, so what about the opposite side? So you moved from Russia to West. So, like, at least in the beginning, did you have any, did you feel uncomfortable with Western culture or Western art in any way? Anything?
Actually, I'm very much uncomfortable in the situation we've got involved in over the last 30 years, say. Starting after Beckett's death, Thomas Bernhard's death, literature has disappeared, actually. Well, I don't know, now it's... Before they used to talk about the Nobel Prize, Borges didn't get it, why, and so on. Nabokov, for that matter. And actually, but now it's so... well, it's better not to speak about it. Well, with the exception of Peter Handke. But we should recognize it, because it's no use saying that every epoch has its own intrinsic value. Everybody, well, the greater part of humanity recognizes that actually we're in a world where serious, demanding art, the kind of art is not a nice story told by and with a view to selling and so on. No, this is matter of life and death. We should remember that art is not a joke or practical joke or whatever. No, it's a matter of life and death. That's why so many writers or composers, Shostakovich actually, couldn't refrain from drinking sometimes because it's unbearable. This being always on the edge of insanity, of being trying to shake your own brain, to use Rimbaud's expression, shaking your brain. And it's very, very difficult to bear all this. Instead of this kind of life or death attitude or feeling, they just write. And so compare the greatest writers of the 20th century like Robert Musil, Kafka, of course, Proust. Do we have anything like that now? It's ridiculous, just for Beckett, for that matter. So we should recognize it, otherwise it's just correctness, the kind of cultural correctness, political correctness, or whatever. This shouldn't be correct. We should try to explain the world, to probe into its mysteries, failures, disasters, and that's what I've been trying to do all my life, actually. So it doesn't really matter for me whether my books are sold or unsold, remain unsold. What counts is this activity, this kind of step I make towards the truth, say, probably not the absolute truth, why not? Yes, just a step towards revelation and understanding and step towards the cosmos, if you wish, just to feel the stars which we can't see, and even about which we don't know anything, just to feel the whole of creation. Try to feel it. Of course you can't, but you better have this feeling that even the very invisibility of the world is in your works. But no longer, well, I think it was, yes, throughout centuries, it's been on the agenda. But now, what kind of truth? The only truth we have, at our disposal is money. I mean, how many copies are sold,
Yes.
how many. So we should acknowledge this truth, the partial truth, but still it's the truth. So if we don't, if we just sort of lull ourselves into a sort of false sense of security, but everything's okay, the culture, the Salzburg Festival exists, but where's Toscanini? Where's Furtwängler? The Salzburg Festival does exist, and so what? The very fact of existence doesn't mean anything. It should exist in every sense of the word.
Yeah, it's very deep remark. I think it's yeah. Maybe we are too much accustomed to sort of superficial democracy or capitalism.
I don't know. We probably need peace and quiet. Being worried, irritated all the time, it's not good for your health. So we often, very often, think in terms of our health. But to help with health, I just for this dialogue with invisible stars, I'm prepared to sacrifice my peace of mind, the comfort of my body, because in Lermontov's poem, a famous poem, a star talks to a star. But you have to hear this talk, you have to risk your life. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Can I move to a more sort of mundane topic about the
Yes.
piano playing? So, I prepared the question, what is the most important quality for a pianist? I don't know if it's a right question.
But, well, yes, it is a question. I'll try to answer. Right quality is the these stars we can't see, but the stars we have to feel in order to perform Beethoven and Brahms. So, no, just I think that's not a good idea just to practice. You should, you know how Gilels practiced, for instance. He would, I didn't hear him practice, but a friend of mine told me. He would play for 10 minutes, say. Then he would just walk around his studio and flat. Why? Because he needed to hear the music away from the piano. He needed to put it into, space, to allow it to grow by itself. And it's very important. It's not just 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. No, Gilles, absolutely, it's incredible the way he talked even, because he talks musically. These pauses there was a certain rhythm in what he said. And at some point, I realized that he was always with music, always. Just never letting it go. Even when we drank cognac, for instance, he was drinking musically. It was absolutely incredible, this feeling of being deeply engrossed, living with music all the time. So actually that's what one pianist should aspire to, introducing music into every compartment of his or her life. Not just here, but these spaces too narrow, it's not enough. It should be, again, let's think in terms of these invisible stars. So, well, that's my advice. I think that, or advice, or just that's what being a pianist amounts to. Just being a part of the cosmos. And music is the cosmos, actually. So you just don't leave music. It doesn't mean that you can't just walk away from the piano. Just live with music. And, it's very important to work without looking at the score, or you can look at the score, but without touching the piano. I did it rather often in my life, and it helps enormously. So, I mean that it should be part of your being, music. It's create a kind of space where music lives with you. And this space doesn't depend on arpeggios. It depends on your attitude towards, on the space you have, you can offer to music. And then music will offer you its space and its time.
So, can I ask, Gilles practice 10 minutes, then he is away from the piano for 10 minutes, and he comes back?
It depended, actually.
Depends.
It could be 15 minutes, or I don't know.
Sure.
But anyway, he needed to get away from piano. Just to allow it to sink into him. I mean, but I repeat, I didn't hear him practice. I had to play on his own piano several times, but not this. I didn't witness his practicing. But just to say that it's quite different from what Richter did, for instance. Richter, just 7, 8 hours a day, not non-stop, but almost. At least he didn't get up every 10 or 15 minutes. So it's different. Well, why not? Michelangelo as well. He would stick to the piano. But Gilels, well, after all, I was his pupil, so he interested me a lot, really.
Yeah, so maybe in Japan, basically we are told to practice piano like as many hours as possible and practice like one Chopin etude like 5,000 times. And if you play only 4,000 times, you'll be the loser or something like that.
Yes, the point is that I was actually, I think I had COVID just at the very beginning, because I was first in Taiwan, then I went to Japan. I wasn't in China, but it was in November, 3 years ago. And it was already on, I mean, but they didn't speak about it. But then finally they revealed this bitter truth. And I felt seriously ill. And I even thought about at some point, well, okay, that's it, I'm going to die. And in my mind, I thought about my life, about music, about the piano. And I thought, my goodness, I practiced so many hours. I spent so many hours on Chopin's etudes without ever reaching any result. Well, with the exception of 2 etudes I played in Brussels. Well, it was obligatory, actually. I had to. And then I thought, my goodness, so the piano is just for nothing. And then I heard Bach's Preludes and Fugues. And I said to myself, no, this was what I learned from Bach, actually. This multitude of worlds, every world is independent and somehow connected to the others. So it wasn't in vain. I didn't waste my time. And so Chopin's etudes, well, this was a waste of time. But Gilels, actually, again, my friend told me this story. He asked Gilels, Emil, why didn't you play Chopin's study? Well, he played number 2 opus from opus 20 to 25, posthumous. But he said, I can't. It's remarkable. Gilels can't play Chopin's etudes. Whereas now, many pianists just play all of them in one concert. And but you should recognize that Gilels, it's a very good example. He had tremendous. It goes without saying, his technique was just vertiginous, it was unmentionable. But he couldn't play Chopin's etudes, and he just, okay, put up with it. He didn't struggle, No, well, I can't, okay, there are other pieces to play. So one should be realistic, not just, of course I must. No. There's so many pieces to play and to feel from the inside that actually, well, Chopin's etudes.
I see. So, to me, it feels like for you, the Bach, like a well-tempered clavier, is the kind of basis of your musical world.
Yes, because instead of playing, well, I played the etudes, many etudes actually, but my step right, as I say, my really real exercise, true exercise, playing Bach's preludes and fugues every day, well, for an hour and a half, say. And that's what allowed me to learn all of them by heart without being sort of too tired, without getting too tired. No, actually, it came naturally. And this is really it helped me a lot even my ordinary life. I mean, my life is full of polyphonies because of that, because I know that there's a voice there. Yes, there is another voice over there. So, and they belong to the same world, or to the same fugue, if you wish. So actually, it's this was a tremendous school, Bach's preludes and fugues. And when you think that it was just written like an exercise, this is what's so extraordinary about it. It wasn't intended to become, a masterpiece I'm writing today. It's not a masterpiece, I'll write it tomorrow. It was just an exercise. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think it was originally meant to be a pedagogical pieces.
Yeah. No, but this is, when you think about it, when you think about Bach, who didn't think in terms of what is done now. I'm conservative. My own children mock me. No, he just didn't give it them. And it's absolutely.
I think it's quite natural. I mean, like as if he was like just walking, or he was living. His life is reflected in those preludes and fugues.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is something, which means that actually it becomes a kind of ritual. You just you don't think that you walk from here to the door, and this walk of yours creates a masterpiece. No, but this walk is also kind of a ritual. It's very important in Japan. I've talked about it of late, actually, these last days, about the links between Japan and Russia. They said there was a famous philosopher, Korzhev, Russian, who lived in Paris and gave lectures on Hegel and phenomenology of spirit, with the spirit. And he thought that the end of the world had come. It was after the Second World War, in the beginning of the 50s, because, now, thanks to the United States, the world is made up of puppets buying goods. So puppets buy goods. And that's it, that's the end of the world. We were like, as he said at some point, we were like birds sitting on a branch, and just more philosophy. Okay. And then he went to Japan, and he changed his mind, changed up his mind. He thought that is going on. Our history can go on, thanks to the past viewed through rituals. Japan, supported by rituals, which provide this link to the past, to our own states of mind, the ones we went through, which resulted in what we have now. And this is really the space we need. We need our own history in order to go on. And this, he realized it thanks to his visit to Japan in the 50s. He took place. So actually, I think it's very, very important. The Russians, well, like many others, among other people and nations, have very important links with Japan. And in my life, Japan played a very important role, starting with poetry, then the Ami, Nosit, Hokusai, Utamaru, well, many, Seisho Nagon, of course, and to Shidekenko. So actually, and this is actually what's happening now in Russia, in Ukraine. It's a betrayal of Japan as well. Russia betrays its own history, its links to the rest of the world, and to Japan, among other nations, which is very important, vital link, which is destroyed by these bastards, by these barbarians. So this also is very important to realize to what extent even Japan is betrayed by the Russian, by today's Russians, yes.
I see. So, yeah, as a Japanese, we tend to feel all the time that we are an isolated nation. We were lucky that we were not really invaded by like Mongolians and others. So, I mean, we have had a peaceful life and a comfortable life, and we were able to nurture such environment because, we understand each other very well. So some people think it's not a very good way of living life, but what you said is that the Russian philosopher thought the Japanese style has some meaning, which is very good to hear for us.
Yes, well, but it's interesting that he's sort of changing up his mind, to such a point. I mean, the end of history, and suddenly, no, that there is a way of avoiding it, of going on. And yes, because, but the rituals, it's this ritualistic element we encounter, come across in Japan. It's so important. When I first saw, in '82 it was, I knew no play, no performance. It was, I knew music, for instance, I knew some texts and so on, but for the first time when I saw it, really it was an event in my life. Then I went rather often to North, to Kabuki, of course. And so actually I just felt it. I felt this rituals, felt the past, and it's very much just not to know, in 1917 something happened. No, to feel it. This is very, very important. And you can do it, easily, actually, through just, it's there, no performance. You just feel it. And this is important to be able to feel it, really. It's not just a date in a book. It's there for you to touch even.
Thank you very much.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, it was very informative. You make us think so much.
Thank you.
So, okay, maybe it's a last question, but maybe it's a similar question as before, but what would you give any advice to Japanese musicians, music lovers, listeners? Any final comments from you would be greatly appreciated.
Well, just don't think that if you play it, you put it 500 times, certain piece you'll get to the bottom of it. No, sometimes it's. I remember just going back to Gilels, which I do pretty often, needless to say. he played in, when was it, in 71, I think, something like it. He played with Böhm, Mozart's last concerto. And his daughter told me, oh, it was so hot inside, he didn't even touch the piano. And still he didn't know the concerto. So she said, no, just was sitting in the score. Well, you see, it's a very good example. And it's perfection itself, this interpretation of his. As many others, of course, many other interpretations. So, well, just don't forget that everything happens in your brain, in your mind, and even scales happen here. Of course, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't touch the piano at all. You should, but you should go through your brain, through your mind, through your feeling of the world as such.
Yeah, I think Japanese people tend to, if there's some technical difficulties, our objective will be how to make it perfect, how to play it with no flaws, just perfectly. So maybe we need to practice 5,000 times. That's maybe, unfortunately, that's not the solution. Just,
because you become, I don't know, you get mentally tired. In Russia, well, I remember, it's a very good example. Actually, when I took part in the Brussels competition, there was another competitor, a woman who was excellent, still is, I hope, an excellent pianist, and she won the competition which had taken place within the Conservatoire. These people coming all over the Soviet Union. I was just designated because I had won the Bach competition, so it was kind of, I didn't have to take part in that competition, which was destined to select somebody for the Brussels competition. And she played wonderfully, apparently, but she was a hard worker. She went on and on and on and on. And finally, at the competition itself, she wasn't as brilliant as before, because she grew tired of the pieces she was playing. She just grew tired. She had enough of them in a way, although she never acknowledged it, of course. But I mean, that's what happened. So don't really keep fresh this love for a piece of music you're performing. Just be in love with it all the time. And sometimes to just even with the human being you're in love with, you should sometimes go on a holiday. But the matter stands differently with animals. I have a cat, a wonderful cat, whom I miss terribly now, because we seldom part. Of course, he's taken care of and so on. But I mean, with animals, the matter stands differently. But with human beings, sometimes, even if you are deeply in love. So actually, that's what happens with music. I think that you should keep your love, the freshness of your love throughout your relationship with such and such piece.
Yes, it was great that you mentioned the word love and how to make love as fresh and long-lasting, which is an important factor. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, the time is running out, so it was a great 1 hour. I'm sure all the listeners enjoyed very much.
Wow.
Great.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much.